there's a lot of these people from unreached people groups that are migrating to a city near you. And so it's much easier to think of missions as foreign, very distant away from us. And sometimes that's not as invasive on our own lifestyle. If you're to really have an impact there, it sometimes means a lifestyle change of where you spend your evenings or weekends. And we need to see that as strategic gateways for the gospel around the world.
Welcome to the Innovative Church Leaders Podcast, where we help you experience and bring renewal to your mission field. Join us and receive free resources at innovativechurchleaders.org. On today's episode of the Innovative Church Leaders Podcast, I have with me Chris Clayman from the Joshua Project. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great. Thanks, Eric.
Well, I'm very excited for the Beyond Us conference. You're one of the key speakers. I want to just introduce people who may not be familiar with the Joshua Project. You've got a map behind your head there. I know you guys do a lot of great work in helping us understand the unreached people groups around the planet. But talk a little bit about the Joshua Project. How did it get started and how did you get involved?
Yeah, it goes back to the early days. There was an initiative around the world, a global evangelism initiative, where it was an Argentine, a Malaysian guy, Chinese, and Indian. So global leaders had said, we need to start a church for every people. And that sounds great until you realize at that point, we didn't have any clarity as to who the people of the world were. And so there was cobbled together list over here and over here. And so Joshua Project became part of the data list, the information on the people groups of the world that was agreed upon globally for a evangelism initiative called AD 2000 and beyond. And at the beginning, there was maybe 1,800, 1,900 unreached people groups that were the largest ones around the world in this Joshua Project 2000 list. And it really mobilized missions all around the world, from the global north, the global south, lots of people involved. Year 2000 came and went, that shut down. Joshua Project continued and expanded to all people groups, including those that have more of a Christian population. And the idea there was we still need to, there's always work to be done no matter where you're at, but also to mobilize the growing missions force in the majority world for pioneer evangelism, pioneer frontier missions and church planting. And so where we're at today, I joined Joshua Project 2 years ago. There were only 2 to 4 staff members historically in Joshua Project, even though it grew to be one of the most used mission websites in the world, because it really provides a destination map for the Great Commission. Like, have you ever been on an airplane and you're bored, you look at the little magazine, where can these airlines take you? A lot of people get interested in missions. We're like, where do we start? Where do we go? Who are those peoples that don't have breakthrough churches among them, that don't have significant numbers or resources to reach their own people? And so really Joshua Project exists to highlight the peoples and places with the least access or response to the gospel, so that the body of Christ worldwide can prioritize its prayer and mission efforts. And so we are now expanding to having a global staff. I think we're right around 30 staff members now, 15 countries or so, to try to get better information, to try to keep up with all that God's doing. We'll never catch up with God, but at least we want to get a bit better picture of what he's doing, to really clarify where the most strategic needs are. And there's still, you take what we call frontier people groups, which are less than one Christian for every 1,000 people. And you just take those alone, and it's almost a quarter of the world's population that still live in those groups. And so we have to do a lot of work to raise this in the conscience of the existing church, existing mission organizations, existing field missionaries. Like, there's really some breakthrough church planting that needs to take place, and redirect our efforts and resources that way.
Well, it's a fascinating website, joshuaproject.net. It's incredibly practical, thorough, helpful. I would love to hear just a glimpse. Like you said, there's so much that God is doing around the world, and we're here to help inspire pastors, church leaders towards spirit-led innovation, reaching new people, making disciples who make disciples. What are some of the fun ways you're seeing God do just that?
Man, well, I'll tell you a couple of stories from Africa. I was a missionary in Mali, and so I always kind of go towards Africa. But it's really inspiring for people who are passionate about evangelism, discipleship, church planning, but they've never really had information about beyond their own world, beyond their own people, or beyond their own country. And when they get that, they're almost like near tears or actual tears going, we just didn't know. We have to do something about this. So, two quick stories. A guy in the Zambia, like 20 something years ago, we have what we call Unreached of the Day with Joshua Project. You can sign up for emails daily and just get these profiles and unreached people groups to remind us of the needs every day. And they were, it was either through that or some prayer profiles where they're easy to print and see on our website. They were praying for the people groups of the world. And there was this one particular Muslim group in the Sahel, which is the sub-Saharan region of Africa. I won't name the country, but he was very convicted that through prayer that he needed to go to this group. Well, he didn't have funds. He didn't have any sort of instrument or way to get there. So he and his friend, as like 20 something year old, said, we have to do something about this. We have to go. How do we get there? Well, we're going to walk. Now, in America, we don't use like kilometers. So it's basically over 4,000 miles, the trek that he mapped out. And we're talking through rough areas. If he were to go directly, it would be through like Democratic Republic of the Congo, Central African Republic, all sorts of civil war and genocide going on. Rwanda, Burundi is in the shadow of that during 2000s. And so he ends up mapping out this route, even through rough areas, but it was the safest route. And someone heard about it beforehand, bought him a ticket. He ends up going to this place, lives among Muslims, sees disciples made, heavy persecution. Even people he was leading to Christ were either killed or beaten severely. And he stuck with it, persevered, saw disciples made, church started, 14 years. Now he trains African missionaries to work among Muslims. The thing that
Wow.
sticks out to me about that story is how far would we walk to be that first Christian someone knows? How
Yeah.
far would we walk to at least give someone the hope of Christ in us and being that witness in a community where they've never experienced it?
Hmm.
In almost a similar country, this is Uganda, not far from Zambia. Just heard this one this last week. He's one of our representatives in Africa. And he was one of those that was like, we just did not know. We have to do something about this. So he graduates like 150 Bible school students every year. And now he's seeing that as a missionary pipeline. And so they've created the mission force of East Africa. It's like Africa is not a mission field, we're a mission force. And indeed, like there's 7 times as many missionaries in the global south than there were 50 years ago. It's
Wow.
skyrocketing. Whereas missionaries from the West are plateauing, it's skyrocketing in the majority world. And so he has printed out all, at first he was like handwriting all the stats and information on unreached people groups surrounding areas. Now he's printed out maps where they're located, dots on the map. He wants to turn red dots to green dots, basically unreached people groups to ones that are not unreached anymore, that have breakthrough churches. And they want to see every single people group have disciples made, church started in the next 14 years. And they are passionately putting their hands on these maps, praying for them. And so it's so inspiring for us around the world, some of these stories you're hearing of the passion for missions.
I love it. It's so, like you said, not only inspiring but convicting. These
Yeah.
are these are folks that just have so little and yet are giving so much, and God is blessing and moving powerfully. I would love to hear what are some of the ways you've seen churches in the West engage in a more compelling or effective way with not just Joshua Project, but also missionaries overseas. There's been a shift to invest in local indigenous leaders in some ways and still going. But I would just love to hear kind of your perspective of what are the most effective ways churches are getting involved overseas.
You know, the world is so much more connected now than it was certainly 10, 15 years ago. But even COVID changed things radically in how people function and the digital transformation of how even people investigate the gospel, but even how discipleship and church planting is taking place in frontier people groups. So imagine you are a member of one of these groups where you've never heard of a Christian. In fact, the myth, the narrative, the story in your people is, I bleed Muslim, or it is impossible for one of my people to become a Christian. So a missionary shows up in your village, maybe from a very distant culture, because that's all that exists. And immediately, even if you have questions inside, you have this social compelling to save face, to defend your people, defend your religion. You know the community is overlooking your shoulder of any interactions you're having. So face to face physically, I might defend Islam. I might reject Christianity outright. I might belittle you as an outsider, but privately, I'm asking questions because there's this false sense of anonymity online. I'm asking questions. Well, that's a great space for those in the global north who have a lot of skills in social media and marketing and just used to interacting in that way without all the cultural stuff that comes and the skills you need to have to effectively communicate in person. There's great examples of, say, people from America paying for setting up ads, managing like social media campaigns to get the gospel going forth. In some of our West African work, we'd spend $10,000 on ads, and over 1 million Muslims would watch a gospel video with $10,000.
Wow.
Like, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
But if it's strategic, where the leads that come from that, for lack of a better word, the people that are interested, connect them with people who have better understanding of the culture and language, and they're sorting through genuine interest or not. And then that's being passed off to people on the ground who are local evangelists who are going to be more effective than someone distant culturally. There's this great interplay and interconnection of how the gospel is spreading across countries through digital means, through different nodes, physical spaces where people are at. So that's a powerful thing. The other thing is the diaspora. There's a lot of these people from unreached people groups that are migrating to a city near you.
Yeah.
And so it's much easier to think of missions as foreign, very distant away from us. And sometimes that's not as invasive on our own lifestyle. But now when it comes to, you could buy camel in your city from a Somali
Yeah.
restaurant or something.
Mhm.
If you're to really have an impact there, it sometimes means a lifestyle change of where
Yeah.
you spend your evenings or weekends or where you buy your rice or whatever, just to create more opportunities for you to have an impact among unreached people groups. That's where you're seeing a lot of flow of the gospel, is from cities, from the diaspora, because these unreached people groups are bridging their culture to the culture of
Mm.
existing Christians, learning language, being able to relate more through their businesses and education, where they're bumping shoulders with Christians where they didn't in the past. And we need to see that as strategic gateways for the gospel around the world. There are ways that you can strategically partner with those on the ground. It's also a great danger as well if you don't have a cultural
Yeah.
understanding. So usually best practices there will involve accountability at a local level so that they really understand what's happening culturally locally, so you're not being duped, because there's a lot of that in global missions as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's super helpful. We've adopted a family that moved here from Syria, and just the ways we've been able to have meaningful conversations and build friendships. I remember years ago, a young man from Eritrea who came to our youth group every week, brought his friends. And I remember at the end of the 4 years, because he'd never chosen to follow Jesus, I asked him, why did you keep coming? He said, well, you were my first American friend.
Yeah.
Too often we overlook people who might be very open to the gospel and at the very least very open to friendship.
And there was a time period not too long ago where the number one Muslim group you would meet, chances are 50% chance, if you met a Muslim on a campus in the US, they'd be Saudi, from
Wow.
Saudi Arabia, where
Yeah.
Mecca is, Medina, like this is the heartland of Islam. And Saudi Arabia was paying for Saudis to come be influenced by America.
Yeah.
And so there were stories of like Saudis coming with the full suitcase of gifts for all of the American homes that they
Mm.
were going to set foot in, to give gifts to these hospitable Americans. And they would leave 2 to 3 years later with that suitcase never opened.
Oh, that is
And just
heartbreaking.
heartbreaking that, I mean, there were many Saudis who came to Christ and many hospitable, loving Christians that
Yeah.
interacted with them, but many never got that and they wanted that. And so, what opportunities has God given you, given us through business, through your neighbors, through just migration into your cities, refugee crisis,
Yeah.
international? I mean, I know a guy like a town of 300 in Iowa that's a very strategic evangelist among Muslims because he's figured out a way to get on to chats online and
Wow.
interact with them and help kind of lead them to the gospel. So there's no excuse anymore. It's just
Yeah.
how we're going to spend our time.
That's so good. Well, we're excited to have you at the Beyond Us Conference. Innovative Church Leaders is one of the sponsors. I would love to hear either a glimpse of what you're going to share with us, or what is your message to pastors and church leaders in the Western world, the global North, as you described it. What are some other ways you want to see the church at work here?
Yeah, I think I'll probably almost give, like we have State of the Union in the United States where you say where it's at. I'll probably give a state of the Great Commission. You know,
I
it
love
said,
it.
go make disciples of all nations, of all peoples. That word is ethne, you know, all the peoples of the world. When you see the word Gentiles, even in the New Testament, it's the word ethne. It's all these non-Jewish groups in the world. But not many of us have really heard a take of where is that at now. And we often make the assumption because we hear of the church existing in all these countries of the world. And it's true, like the gospel is extended to really every country of the world. But we don't realize how many peoples, distinct people groups, distinct cultures, distinct languages around the world where the gospel doesn't easily jump from this group to another for linguistic reasons, understanding reasons, or acceptance reasons. And we have to be intentional about spreading the gospel to all peoples so that God may be glorified. His blessing can go to all peoples of the world. So I'll kind of give a state of where that's at. And it's pretty probably, as I've given that presentation, even for mission organizations focused on unreached people groups, they're often very challenged and go, wow, like there really is some clarity here of the
Mm.
major task remaining, if you will, not to overstate our purpose, but God does use us for his glory to spread to all peoples.
Yeah.
And what are those places? What are those peoples? That's what I'll be sharing.
Love it. Well, we're actually going to be giving away free passes to Beyond Us Conference. You can find out more about the event, beyondusconference.org. Make sure you're signed up for our email newsletter at innovativechurchleaders.org. I want to also make sure people know about your book. We're going to give away a free copy of that as well. Last question, Super Plan, A Journey into God's Story. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, sometimes you need someone who doesn't speak English as their first language to put into words in the English language something that has more meaning. And this happened with the Bangladeshi missionary friend of ours in New York City. So I should have died in Bangladesh. You know, I was a Muslim, became a follower of Jesus. The imam wanted to give my father a sickle to cut off my head in the middle of the night, but my father did not kill me. Do you know why? I said, no. God has super plan. And he would go on, describe other different scenarios in his life, and it always come back to because God has super plan. And what he was basically saying is God has this larger story that he invites us into. And we can't explain it. It's often not the path we would choose for ourselves. It's not a matter of God coming and blessing what we do, our vocation, our interest, our plans. It's not even about inviting Jesus into our lives, as good as it is to have Jesus into our lives. It's really about abandoning our story, whatever we think that is, and yielding that to God and whatever he would like to do with us. And that often means his guidance is a winding river, and we just trust ourselves to the current of it, that will lead us as he desires and use us in the way that he desires. So in the book Super Plan, A Journey into God's Story, it's my own story as well as 3 Muslim background Christians who all had attempts on their life, but they chose to love and forgive, and God has used them probably to see thousands and thousands of Muslims come to Christ now as a result of their witness. And it's written in a way that I think readers are challenged to investigate what is my role in God's story, because each one of our roles are different. We all have unique pathways in His story. Is written in a way for people to investigate that themselves.
That's so great. For more that Chris is writing or sharing with the world, Linktree/Chris Clayman. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. Keep up your amazing work.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be with you.
Thanks for listening to the Innovative Church Leaders Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and share as we bring Spirit-led innovation, reach new people, and make disciples who make disciples. Be sure to sign up for our email newsletter at innovativechurchleaders.org for free resources and an opportunity to join a cohort with Dr. N.T. Wright.